If you're looking for a fun craft to do during the summer months, I have got this really fun and easy sunprint DIY craft idea that you're definitely want to check out. Hey there, it's Donna. Let's get crafting. I'm going to be using some watercolor paper. I got two different sizes and brands here. One's from Target from several years ago, along with some Canson watercolor paper. I wanted to try them both out. I'm going to experiment using a piece of flattened birch bark. I also wanted to try out a piece of wood, so I've got this square piece here and also a scrap of natural fabric. You're going to need a craft mat to protect your surface, a couple of jars, some coffee filters, some gloves, along with some rubbing alcohol and turmeric. I'm also going to show you how you can do this using some paprika, which I'll show a little bit later. So it is super important to protect your surface and your hands because turmeric can stain. I'm going to add some turmeric to my jar here, about a tablespoon, and then I'm going to go ahead and pour some of the rubbing alcohol into the jar, and then I'm going to give it a bit of a stir. Now, to start off with, I didn't use very much of the rubbing alcohol, but I discovered that I actually ended up needing a lot more of this than I first thought. So you can see here, there's not a whole lot in there, and I think it's just because over time, as I was mixing it, it did start to evaporate. So keep that in mind when you are putting this together. If you need to make some more solution, you definitely can as you move further along with your project. Okay, so now I'm going to put a coffee filter over my second jar, and I'm going to be pouring my mixture here through my coffee filter, and that's going to separate the turmeric from the rubbing alcohol. And once you've got that poured in there, you can go ahead and collect the edges of the coffee filter and squeeze out the excess liquid. So as I said, you saw how much liquid I had, and you're going to see how little came out. And like I said, I think it's just because of evaporation. So you're going to also want to work quickly. So this step is super important. You're going to want to go in an area where it is darker and there's no sunlight, because this is a light sensitive product that or solution that you have created. Just using a paintbrush here, and I'm going to create just some shapes here on the watercolor paper that I have. This is the one that I picked up from Target. Target used to be in Canada, so I had picked up this paper a very long time ago, and I still had a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and add some to the birch bark and the wood slice. You don't need to go over it too many times. It actually soaks in quite well. And this is where I was at the bottom of my jar, and I'm like, oh boy, I don't have enough to put onto my second piece of watercolor paper. So I just quickly got up and I ran some more rubbing alcohol through the coffee filter that had that turmeric in it still. So I went ahead and did that, came back, and I finished painting on the solution onto the surfaces that I had selected. So I did all the same steps using some paprika. I wanted to see how that would turn out, and you can see it's got a really pretty orange color. Once I was done applying it to all the different surfaces, you're going to want to put these into a dark room and allow them to dry really well. And then after that, you want to keep them all nicely protected from light. So I have got this envelope here, and I'm going to put everything inside. It's super important to keep these out of the light. Once they're all dry, you're going to want some picture frames or just some glass sheets. I'm using some pressed flowers and leaves, along with some die cut flowers and leaves that are just out of cardstock. So I'm just working with one sheet at a time. I'm going to be taking my picture frame apart, and I'm going to have a trick for you that I'm going to be showing with you a little bit later. I didn't discover it right away, so just stay tuned for that. But I'm going to take this picture frame apart, and then taking my watercolor paper, you can see that my glass was just too small for this watercolor paper, so I'm going to trim the watercolor paper down to size. And you can do all the cutting down to size after if your paper fits within your frame, but this particular sheet didn't, so I wanted to just cut it down so it was just a little bit more easy to manage. Once that is all trimmed up, then you can go ahead and select the pressed flowers or pressed leaves that you want to use on here. And I have a full tutorial on how you can press these because if you don't have any in your stash like I have from last year, you can quickly make some. So I'll have that tutorial for you down in the video description. Once you have your flowers or leaves in place in the yellow section of your paper, you're going to put the glass on top, and if it moves, just put it back into place. And then you're sandwiching it between the backing of the frame with the glass and the paper and flowers in between. And then you're going to put this back into the frame. Make sure you put all those little clamps down into place, flip back over, and then you're going to set this aside while you work on all your other ones. I've got this brass frame. You can see things slide in and out of there. I wanted to try it out, and I wasn't thinking at the time that once you add some more bulk to this, you're not going to be able to fit this back in. So you can see I'm going to put these other paper pieces into place, and I'm going to go ahead and select the leaves and flowers that I want to use. This is where you can get really creative and start to play around here. I wasn't sure what I was going to do for this particular one. I've got a pressed rose, and I've got like a pressed carrot flower, some ivy leaves, just lots of different things. I didn't really like how the rose looked, so I ended up going in and changing that up, and I decided I wanted to use some pressed ferns that I had in my stash. I don't have them showing here. There they are. I went ahead and added a couple of pieces of those, and then I was really happy with that. And I put the glass back in place, put all my pieces from the frame back together, and this is where I'm like, yeah, this isn't gonna slide back in there. So I've got another trick for you. You can take some binder clamps and just clamp the edges of the glass and all the other pieces here. Just make sure that the clamps aren't on the yellow, otherwise that clamp is going to show on where all the yellow has been applied. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in place, and this works really well. That's if you don't have any picture frames to use. This is that fabric, and it's got a beautiful orange color from the paprika. I decided this time around I'm going to use my die cuts that I had made. I'm just going to use the leaves, randomly place them all over. I use my Sizzix die cutting machine to create these, but of course if you have another die cutting machine, go ahead and use that. I know Cricut and Silhouette probably has some amazing leaves that you can use to cut out. So I just scattered those all over the fabric, put the glass in place, and you can see I've got it on a flat board, and that is all ready to go. So now for the wood slice, I decided to use a combination of a die cut along with some pressed leaves, just trying to figure out a pattern. I'm really interested to see how that wood slice and this birch bark are going to turn out. This was a complete experiment. I hadn't seen anybody else do that, so I was really excited to try this out. Once you've got those in place, you can just put a piece of glass in place. For the birch bark, I'm trying a clear sleeve. Apparently you can use just a clear piece of plastic or acrylic, and as long as it's clear, it should work. So I decided to try this out. I'm going to just go ahead and put my die cut back in place. It kind of slipped out of place when I put this into the sleeve. So the trick here though is that you want to put it on a firm surface. I've got this board here. I'm going to put both these into place, and the plastic sleeve, I am actually going to tape that down because if a wind kicks up, this will get blown away. So this is super important. Again, you just don't want that tape to touch any of the yellow dye that we had created. So I'm gonna put another piece here on the board just to make it so it's easier to carry it outside. So this is the trick. You can see I've got this piece of paper. It fits nicely in the frame, and I am working on the back side of the frame this time. So I'm going to go ahead and just play around with the design, and then I will be putting the glass in place. Again, this is all the back side of the frame because then you don't have to flip things around and accidentally knock things out of place. It just makes it so much easier to put this all together. So once you have these all ready to go, it's time to move them outside. So I've got them in the bright sunshine on my sun deck. This is after 1 hour. And then this is after just 2 hours, and you can see it's clouded over, so I decided to bring them in, but it worked really well. You can have them outside for 3 to 6 hours, maybe longer. It really depends on your location. I had such a good sunny spot that you can see it worked really, really well. You want to see that fading around all your images that you have placed down. The paprika on the paper faded right out. And so now we need to make a baking soda and water solution. What this is going to do is really activate the color. So again, it's just about a tablespoon and maybe half a cup of water. This part doesn't really matter too much either from all the tutorials that I had learned from. You just want to mix it into a pan here. And then you're going to get your images that you have. You want to first remove any of the die cuts and leaf press. And then you can see that beautiful yellow image that's remaining. The sun will burn all the color away except what's underneath the die cut or pressed leaves and flowers that we had. So here you can see that already the color is getting activated and it's really starting to darken. This is going to really create a distinctive print. I'm wiping off the excess liquid off the back because I didn't want this to warp. And then I'm going to go ahead and dip the birch bark into my solution as well. I tried to just pour it on with a spoon, but I'm like, oh, this isn't working. So I just dipped it right in. And again, I'm wiping off the excess liquid, putting it back onto a mat, and then we're going to be setting those aside to dry. But first, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with all the watercolor paper, removing any of the leaves or flowers and die cuts, placing it into my water and baking solution. And then you're going to just remove excess liquid from the backside of your images, set them on the craft mat, and then we're going to be setting these aside in a dark place to allow that activation to work. So you can see on the piece of wood there how the color is really darkening. You could experiment and you could try to just leave the yellow color if you'd like. But just remember, this is all sun sensitive. So it is going to fade over time. But I'm going to try a couple of tricks to see if I can help to hold the color longer. I haven't tried this before, so I'm really excited to try it out. Here's my fabric. You can see how well that turned out. Those leaves on the fabric are so, so beautiful. I really, really like how this turned out. I'm going to go ahead and just place the entire piece of fabric into the water and baking soda solution. And I'm going to put it onto a mat. You're going to see that this actually soaks up a lot of the liquid. You're going to want to squeeze out as much as you can and then put it on the craft mat and allow it to dry. It does end up becoming all wrinkled, but I end up ironing it all out once it was all dry anyway, so that was just an easy fix. So this is the watercolor here with the turmeric, and you can see how it's all faded out, but the orange color absolutely pops. It is so pretty. I think this one turned out really, really cool. And I, of course, just dipped it into the solution and it helped that color to pop even more. So I set them aside in the dark room, allowed them to dry overnight. I'm using this decorator's varnish in the dead flat finish. There won't be any shine to it. It says it's got some UV blocking to this. So I thought it would be great to try since this is all light sensitive. I'm also going to try the Krylon UV resistant matte spray on the fabric. Here are all my prints and you can see how the color has really changed and everything has really popped. The one that I'm curious about is going to be the birch bark. It didn't change as much as everything else. I was really excited how this wood piece turned out and all the watercolor prints. I had so much fun doing this. This is such a fun experiment to do for the summer. There was a little bit of residue from the baking soda, so I'm just taking a rag and wiping that all off. You can see the back side of this where the sun didn't hit, it did not bleach out. Here is the fabric, and I sprayed that again with the Krylon spray. I ended up ironing it all out. Now I'm going to be going ahead and using this varnish on all the watercolor paper and the wood piece as well as the birch bark. Using a soft bristle brush, I'm going to go ahead and apply it, and you're going to see how everything just really pops. I really am hoping that this will help the color last longer. Since this is an organic piece, it won't last forever. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. But like I said, I'm hoping this varnish will make it last that much longer. So I applied a coat, and I'm going to go ahead and apply a coat to all the others, and the wood and the birch bark. Allow them all to dry well. You can see how the color really pops, and I really like this finish because it's not glossy. It's a nice matte finish. So now you may be wondering what to do with all of this stuff. So I've got this really pretty print, and I'm going to be applying it to a card base. And you can see the card is square, so I'm going to be using one of these images here, but I'm going to cut it down so it's a nice square shape, and it will be the right size to fit on the card. I'm going to just trim it down just a little bit more as needed. And then I'm going to just try it out here. I like how that looks. It looks so pretty. This is that pressed carrot flower, which I thought was really cool. I'm going to add a bit of distressed ink to the edge. And that was because I felt like the card kind of blended in with the print paper a little bit. So I thought this would just help it to pop against that. You can see it's a really pretty color here. It looks nice with our print. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that up, and then we're going to be using some dimensional foam tape on the back, and that will just help the image pop that much more against the background of our card. I'm adding 3 strips of the foam tape to the back side of my print. So I really like how this looks, but I felt like it was a little bit plain, so I decided to add some word stickers that I had in my stash. You could also cut some words out of a book if you choose, or type them up, whatever you like. You can see it's a little bit too slim in size, so it kind of gets lost. So I decided to take a piece of some watercolor paper, and I'm going to stick the word sticker to that watercolor paper, and I'm going to just trim it down to size so it will fit a little bit better on my card. But I find that this just helps to allow it to pop a little bit more. And again, I'm going to be using my distress ink again around the edges of the paper just to help it pop against that background a little bit better. I'm also going to add the foam tape to the back side of our word embellishment that we made here. I'm just going to go ahead and just trim my foam tape down so it's the right width. I actually didn't have the right width in my stash of supplies, so I had to just create my own here. So once you're done with all your embellishments, you can then remove the backing, or figure out your placement first, of course. And then you want to remove the backing off of the foam tape, and then you're going to be pressing that onto your card. You could also add like a little bit of a border around this so the color pops a little bit, but I just like the simplicity of this. I think it's such a beautiful card. I would love to receive something like this. I think this is so pretty. You could even do this as an art piece for somebody. This is a quick and easy project. You just need a wood easel and place the wood piece onto that easel, and you've got a beautiful art piece for a shelf anywhere in your home, as well as in a bookcase. I have got this journal that I had made for myself, and I wanted to add one of these prints to this journal. It's become my little nature journal. I've got a tutorial on how I made this down in the video description below for you to check out. As you can see all the fun little pieces that I've worked on over the years and I've placed in here. So I just decided I think this would be so pretty in this journal. So I'm just trying to figure out where to place it. But first, of course, I needed to trim this down. So I really like this image here. I think it kind of looks a bit like Queen Anne's lace or the carrot flower. And I just think I don't know, there's something about it. So again, I'm just trimming it down to a size that would fit better for my liking in my journal. Now to decide where I want to put this. I am going to be taping this in. I thought it would be really cool to use it as like a little journaling card or just to add some notes of some kind. I decided I'm going to be using some washi tape. So I wanted this to flip up. So I'm adding some washi tape to the top of the image, and I'm going to remove any of the excess washi tape that's on the edge, just using my scissors. And then I'm going to make sure that it's burnished onto the paper. So I'm going to go ahead and place that in the center. And then again, like I said, burnish it onto the paper. I'm just going to push it down with my fingers just for now, but I will be using my scissors later on. But first I decided to add some more security here. And I'm going to go ahead and flip that up and then put some washi tape in place, trim off the excess on the edges, and then I'm going to go ahead and just press that down really well. I do not want this washi tape to lift up because it does pop off more easily. And this is where I'm using my scissors just to burnish that down. And then you got a really nice flip here. And I thought it would be a really fun place to hide like little bits of like notes, maybe a little message to myself. I just really like how this turned out. Dollar Tree has these glass frames. I don't know if they still have them. Let me know down below if you know, but it has 2 pieces of glass. I am going to just trim this particular image. It's got a nice ivy leaf print, and I needed to trim it down so it would fit inside the glass. And I wanted a bit of the glass to show through around the edge. That's why I'm trimming off so much. And then again, I'm going to be sandwiching it between the 2 pieces of glass. I noticed at this point that there was a bit of some goo on the glass. I'm just using some rubbing alcohol and a rag, and I'm going to go ahead and clean that glass up because it was affecting the way my beautiful sunprint looked, and I didn't like that. So I'm going to go ahead and clean the glass up and then finish sandwiching my image between the 2 pieces of glass. So after that, all you have to do is put your glass pieces back into the frame. And you can see that the little holders there are bent, so I need to bend those back into place so that the glass doesn't pop out. And then you also need to put the stand in place, and then that's it. This was an easy project, and I think it would make a wonderful gift for someone. So you can see the birch bark ended up looking absolutely beautiful. I think it turned out so well, especially once I added the varnish. I'm going to be using a hole punch to punch a hole in the top of the birch bark. I thought this would make a wonderful tag. You could add some words to the back of this and turn it into a gift tag. I'm just going to use this mustard color jute twine that I had on hand, and I'm going to go ahead and just string that through the hole. Just very easy and simple. You could add some lace if you'd like, if you have some, but I think this color works really well with the natural look of this tag. But I think it's so cool. I love how this turned out. I can't wait to make more. In fact, I think making an art print would be really cool using birch bark and this technique. If you're looking for some more nature craft inspiration, you'll want to check this playlist out right here. Let me know your favorite project of the day was, and if you've ever tried this technique before, by leaving me a comment down below. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.